You've always embarrassed this family, Isabelle. The sooner you accept that you don't belong here, the sooner we can stop pretending you ever did. Don't bother coming home this year, or any year. That's what my mother said. Cold, measured, final, right after I dared to ask for change. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be erased from your own family's legacy, stay. Because this isn't just my story. It's the moment I stopped asking for a seat and built the whole table instead. It was almost comical. After everything, they still thought their approval mattered. I tapped the screen, letting the grant finalize with a satisfying green check mark, then turned my attention back to the message. Helen, not Mom, not in the tone that message carried. She'd always wielded disapproval like a scalpel, clean, precise, and cold. Another ping, this time from Samantha. Can't wait for our usual suite at Ocean Haven. Bring on the mimosas and massages. I almost laughed. Of course they were still coming. Why wouldn't they? For 2 decades, Ocean Haven had been their sanctuary. The Prescott legacy wrapped in 5-star service and beachfront exclusivity. A place where family hierarchy was maintained like clockwork. A place where I'd been invisible in plain sight. But they didn't know. They didn't know the deed had changed hands. That I'd bought the resort a year ago in absolute secrecy, through a shell trust and with backing from the one family member they'd exiled long before me, Aunt Evelyn. They didn't know Ocean Haven now operated under a mandate that reflected everything they hated about me: community outreach, employee development, sustainability, social impact. They didn't know they were guests in my house. I opened the resort's internal app and pulled up the master reservation ledger. Grace had already color-coded their booking. 3 oceanfront villas, full spa privileges, champagne on arrival. The same tired ritual. I pressed the intercom. Grace, can you get Mr. Delgado on the line? Her voice came back instantly, professional as always. Right away. While I waited, I pulled open a drawer and took out last year's retreat invitation. Gold embossed, heavy cardstock, all flourish and pretense. I flipped it over and stared at the inscription. Family is the only legacy that matters. They had no idea how wrong they were. The phone rang once. Ms. Prescott. Delgado's voice came through, slightly winded. I need to cancel a booking, I said, flat. Certainly. Which guest? My family. All 3 villas, spa packages, every amenity, cancel it all. A long pause. I understood. Effective immediately? Yes, and update the ledger to block future recurring reservations under the Prescott name. You're certain? They've been certain for years, I said, already closing the file. There was a sharp breath. Then, understood, ma'am. I hung up and turned toward the ocean. It shimmered back at me like a secret finally surfacing. I felt the quiet power of the moment settle in my chest. Not glee, not vindication. Something more still, more steady. The silence they once forced on me. I was reclaiming it, repurposing it. A year ago, I'd brought them a proposal. Use a portion of the family fund to support a reintegration program for the formerly incarcerated. I'd done the research, met the experts, outlined every detail. They'd laughed. We don't throw money at lost causes, my father had said. Helen sniffed. That's exactly the kind of bleeding heart nonsense your aunt used to push. Samantha had rolled her eyes. You're like an activist Barbie. That was the last Thanksgiving I attended. Another message buzzed in. A group photo. Ryan with his usual smug grin, cigar half lit. Samantha flashing her phone, probably mid-Instagram story. My parents standing center, stiff and superior. Prescott Spring Retreat 2024, Ocean Haven awaits. I opened the messaging thread, typed slowly. Actually, Ocean Haven just called. Your reservation has been canceled. Seconds later, the dots began to dance. What? That's impossible. We've had that booking for years. Not anymore. The next call came in from Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. Then Samantha. Then my mother. The phone buzzed relentlessly like a hive disturbed. I muted it. Grace stepped in, holding a tablet. Do you want me to alert security tomorrow? No, I said. Let them arrive. You want them to find out in person? I met her eyes. They'll learn something either way. She hesitated, then nodded and left me alone again. For a moment, I sat still. Not savoring the revenge. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. For them. For me. For everything I'd been building while they mocked my ideals. The final ping came in. Just packed my new swimsuits. Ocean Haven, here we come. Not quite. There must be a mistake. We've had a permanent Thanksgiving booking here for 20 years. And yet, the receptionist said gently, you have no reservation today, Mrs. Prescott. I watched it unfold from the security feed in my office, the Pacific light casting soft shadows across my desk as the morning sun climbed higher. The Ocean Haven lobby was calm. Polished floors, curated floral arrangements, quiet jazz humming from hidden speakers. Everything as it should be. Except the Prescott standing at the front desk, their entitlement unraveling in real time. Helen leaned in, her voice sharp but composed, the way it always was when she was on the verge of rage. Check again. We always stay in Villa Aurora. You'll see the name. Prescott. The receptionist, a young woman named Callie who had no idea she was about to become a legend in staff break room lore, smiled with painful professionalism. I've checked twice, ma'am. No reservations under that name for today, or for the rest of the month. Samantha huffed behind her mother, fingers flying over her phone screen. Ryan paced a few feet back, phone already pressed to his ear. My own phone vibrated before he could even finish the first ring. I didn't answer. Seconds later, a voicemail. Then another. Then a text. This has your fingerprints all over it. I smiled and typed back. Yes, they're mine. So is the resort. It didn't take long. Grace walked in moments later, tablet in hand, her expression unreadable but eyes twinkling. It started. Good, I said. Let it breathe. Back on the monitor, Samantha was now gesturing wildly at Callie, who kept her smile intact like a saint. Ryan turned toward the main entrance, pacing again, phone glued to his ear. The messages came rapid fire. Helen sent one. Isabelle, this isn't funny. We're here with luggage. Your sister is exhausted. I replied with a photo. One I'd waited a full year to send. A scan of the Paradise Cove deed, my name bold at the bottom. Then another. A formal contract refusal. Notice of decline. Ocean Haven Spa Partnership Proposal. Applicant, Samantha Prescott. I imagined Samantha reading that, watching the spa deal she'd spent months nurturing implode in a single line. Grace's voice broke through. They're trying Mr. Delgado now. Perfect. The resort manager answered, as always, with elegance. Yes, Mr. Prescott. I understand this is unexpected. However, I've been instructed by the ownership to inform you that the reservation has been revoked. What ownership? I could hear Ryan's voice through the monitor, barely muffled. We've booked this place for 2 decades. The current owner, Delgado said smoothly, who has full authority. A pause. Then Helen's voice. Who is the owner? The next text I sent was a photo from a year ago. Me standing beside Evelyn Carter, both of us holding a ceremonial pen. Evelyn was beaming, proud, unbothered. I'd worn navy that day, clean and simple. In the background, a blurred-out portrait of my grandfather overlooked us both. Then Ryan again. What the hell is this? I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I uploaded the final file. The one Evelyn had sent me in confidence the day she handed me the reins. A recording. My grandfather, seated in his old study, reading the addendum to his will. And so, having observed the integrity and long-term vision of my granddaughter Isabelle, I grant Evelyn Carter full authority to allocate the Prescott Trust's discretionary investments in her name. I believe in her future more than I believe in legacy alone. His voice, steady, clear, final. I sent the video. There was a long pause, a chasm of silence across my screen. Then Grace said, "Samantha just dropped her phone." I closed the feed. My own phone lit up with a message from Ryan, then Helen, then Samantha. They weren't asking questions anymore. They were scrambling for explanations. I sent one final message, short and clean. "If you'd like answers, I'll be in my office tomorrow. Bring everyone." "How did you pull this off?" James Prescott roared as he entered my office. "You weren't looking," I replied, "because you never thought I could." He didn't sit. None of them did. Helen's heels clicked sharply against the marble as she followed him in, her expression drawn but defiant. Samantha's lips were pursed into a line that usually meant a social media rant was brewing, and Ryan hovered near the door like he wasn't sure which side of this war he belonged on anymore. I remained seated behind my desk, arms resting calmly, deliberately. The wall of glass behind me framed the ocean in soft morning gold. Beneath us, Ocean Haven buzzed as usual. Room service carts, yoga classes on the terrace, bellboys escorting newly arrived guests. Life carried on. Unlike them, it had adapted. Grace stood off to the side, poised, a remote in her hand. Behind me, the wall screen was dark. For now. My father advanced a step. "Who helped you?" "You're not used to believing I could do something on my own," I said. "That's your first mistake." "That's not what You never asked what I was building," I cut in. "You never cared." "I thought you worked in a soup kitchen," Helen snapped. "That's what your email said." I leaned forward. "You never read them. Not really." Samantha stepped in. "This is a stunt, some twisted payback." Grace clicked the remote. The screen came to life, revealing a sleek presentation of properties: lush resorts, metropolitan towers, beachfront eco-villages. 15 resorts, I said. 3 continents, built under the Morrison Prescott Group. I let that name hang in the air. $6.1 billion in current assets appeared on screen. Projected revenue curves, employee counts, sustainability scores, donation records. James blinked. "You stole the family name." "I elevated it," I said. "You were shrinking it to a surname. I turned it into an impact." Helen's voice faltered. "You can't expect us to believe." A new window opened on the screen. Evelyn Carter's face appeared, live. "Hello, Helen," she said, voice crisp. "James, children." Helen froze. Samantha actually recoiled. You helped her?" "I protected the legacy your father intended," Evelyn said calmly. "You threw me out. She brought me in. Funny how clarity works." The screen shifted again. A video of my grandfather recorded just months before his passing. "Having witnessed the potential and vision Isabelle has displayed, I entrust Evelyn Carter with discretionary authority to invest the family fund in her name." Helen collapsed into a chair, the weight finally catching up to her composure. "Is this why you denied my spa proposal?" Samantha said, voice rising. "You wanted to humiliate me?" "I denied it," I said evenly, "because it lacked ethics. The spa was overpriced, exploitative, and used unpaid interns." She threw her hands up. "You hypocrite. You preach empathy and cut your own sister off?" "You were never applying for partnership," I said. "You were applying for privilege." Ryan stepped forward, his voice lower. "Is this revenge?" I paused. "No," I said. "This is recognition. I did it so you'd finally see me, and see yourselves." With a nod to Grace, the screen changed one last time. Clips rolled. Dozens of them. Formerly homeless guests sharing how Ocean Haven's seasonal employment programs gave them a second chance. A single mom describing the staff childcare initiative. An ex-construction worker turned concierge detailing how vocational training changed his life. "This," I said, rising from my chair, is my legacy. They watched in silence. You can't cancel this, I said, but I canceled you with grace. I turned back to them one last time. Thanksgiving dinner is still happening. You're welcome, but not as royalty, as guests willing to learn. A major newspaper ran, "From outcast to architect, how Isabelle Prescott quietly built a $6 billion empathy empire." The headline took up the entire top fold of the Sunday edition. My face, unexpectedly serene, framed by the terrace of Ocean Haven, sat beneath it like punctuation to a sentence my family had tried to write in my absence. It felt strange seeing myself through their lens. They had no idea what it had cost. The email count in my inbox ticked upward by the minute. Congratulatory notes, partnership inquiries, invitations to speak. But it wasn't the volume that struck me. It was who they were from. Social workers from Memphis. A former New Roots participant now running a transitional housing center. A young man who said Ocean Haven had given his father the chance to look him in the eye again. My office was quiet, save for the hum of the espresso machine and Grace typing softly across the room. I stared at the printed newspaper in my hand, then set it aside. The legacy they had once denied me was no longer up for debate. Ryan arrived first. He didn't knock. He stepped in like someone entering holy ground, cautious but not performative. In his hand, a single-page proposal printed on thick cream paper. No gold trim, no embossed logo. He offered it to me in silence. I read the title, Prescott Outreach Center, a new model for belonging. "This is what we talked about?" I asked, flipping through the 3 pages attached. He nodded. "It's a continuation of what you built here. Smaller towns, places no one ever invests in." "And whose name will it carry?" His voice didn't flinch. "Mine, not Mom and Dad's." I studied him. His suit was less pressed, but he looked more grounded than I'd ever seen him. There was no smugness, no expectation. "It's a draft," he added. "It needs your eye." Before I could reply, Samantha entered. She looked different, too. Less polished, more present. "I submitted a withdrawal to the spa chain," she said simply. "And a request." "For what?" "I want to lead the Life Skills Scholarship Program." She paused. "Not because I'm owed, because I finally see why it matters." My fingers tapped the desk slowly. "You don't get to use our model unless you live it." "I know," she said. "I'm here to learn." Evelyn entered just then, walking softly but with the kind of weight no one could ignore. She scanned the room, then picked up the proposal on my desk. After a pause, she nodded. "Now that sounds like a Prescott worth keeping." The conversation that followed was honest, cautious, and sometimes uncomfortable, but it was real. Ryan walked through the details of the pilot plan: job training, housing transitions, mentorship. He didn't use buzzwords. He spoke plainly, sometimes with hesitation. That, more than anything, told me he was doing this for the right reasons. Grace brought in coffee and a stack of impact reports, laying them next to the proposal without a word. Outside the office windows, Ocean Haven moved like it always did. Calm, purposeful, alive. Ryan asked, "So, will you help us?" I looked at the screen where a live call was coming in. Representatives from UNDP and a global equity coalition, waiting to discuss adopting our model across 6 countries. "Yes," I said finally, "but it starts somewhere forgotten." They blinked. "There's a town where Grandpa grew up," I continued. "Population just under 2,000. No grants, no visitors. It's never been on any Prescott portfolio." Ryan nodded. "That's where we begin." They stood to leave. Grace handed me the financial reports I hadn't gotten to yet. As the door clicked softly behind them, I flipped to the final page. A new line item glowed in bold. Anonymous donation. $2 million. The routing path confirmed what I already suspected. James Prescott. A year later, I walked down the hallways of Ocean Haven. This time, no one stops me, asking what I'm doing here. I am the master. I am the keeper of the ideal. The morning sun flooded the corridors, casting a soft gold across the polished floors. Fresh floral arrangements lined the walls, each one sourced from our local greenhouse program. Along the hallway, framed photographs had replaced the old marketing posters. Smiling guests, new Roots graduates, teams planting gardens in places long forgotten. The last frame near the lobby was new. I paused before it. It showed us, my family, all of us. But not in tuxedos or curated poses. We stood behind the buffet line, sleeves rolled, serving trays in hand, laughing with volunteers. A moment captured from last Thanksgiving's dinner. A moment we hadn't staged, but one we'd earned. Grace appeared beside me, tablet in hand. The UNDP rep is here. They brought your badge. I followed her down to the main terrace, where the second annual New Roots Festival was already underway. The crowd was larger this year. More countries, more flags, more languages. Children ran barefoot through the gardens. Former guests were now staff. Former staff were now leaders. The ecosystem was alive and breathing. At center stage, I was handed the Global Recognition Badge for innovating hospitality with purpose. A small disc, etched in glass, resting in my palm like validation. But it felt quieter than I expected. Not smaller, just earned. James stood nearby, his hair grayer, his suit more humble. I spent decades hosting people with money, he said quietly. You host people with meaning. I looked at him for a long moment. He didn't fill the silence with apologies. He didn't try to. And that was enough. Nearby, Samantha was leading a workshop under the shaded pavilion, guiding a dozen young women through a budgeting and job interview simulation. Her voice was calm, her posture no longer defensive. When one of the girls raised her hand and called her Mr. Prescott, Samantha smiled. Not smugly, gently. Ryan took the stage just before sunset. The Prescott Outreach Center, he began, now employs over 300 people across 6 states. Most of them came from places that used to be ignored, but not anymore. The applause wasn't thunderous, it was warm, genuine. I slipped away before the last speech, stepping into the lobby once more. The noise dulled behind me. The photo gallery bathed in amber light. I let my fingers rest lightly on the frame of our family picture. They had changed. We all had. Evelyn found me there, as she always did, without needing to be called. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Do you regret not punishing them more? I turned to face her. They were never my enemy, I said softly. Just blind. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Grace's name flashed on the screen. I answered quietly. Ms. Prescott? A voice said on the other end. This is the United Nations Summit Secretariat. We'd be honored if you'd keynote our global summit on equity and dignity next spring. I smiled into the receiver. I'll bring more than a speech, I said. I'll bring a model that works. They once told her she wasn't enough. Not polished enough, not obedient enough, not Prescott enough. For years, she watched from the sidelines as her family gathered, celebrated, and made decisions in rooms she was never invited into. Her ideas were dismissed as naive. Her compassion was called weakness. Her dreams, too radical. But while they toasted their legacies in private villas and glass towers, she was building one that couldn't be inherited. It had to be earned. She didn't fight them with rage. She didn't seek to burn it all down. Instead, she built silently, patiently, deliberately, a sanctuary for the forgotten, a structure strong enough to hold both purpose and profit. When the moment finally came to reveal the truth, she didn't scream. She simply opened the door and let them see what they had chosen not to. And in that silence, pregnant with truth, they began to understand the weight of everything they'd overlooked. Justice didn't arrive with fury. It came with clarity. No one was dragged through scandal. No one was humiliated in front of the world. Instead, they were asked to join the very table they once denied her. But this time, without thrones or nameplates. Only humility. only willingness to grow. And one by one, they did. Not perfectly, not all at once, but enough to prove that redemption wasn't a gift. It was a decision. When injustice is met with quiet conviction, the truth doesn't shout. It endures. It shows up in the hands that serve, the eyes that finally see, and the hearts that choose to begin again. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about transformation, about the courage it takes not only to confront those who doubted you, but to remain open enough to lead them into the light when they're ready to follow. No wall of pride can outlast the steady tide of purpose. And perhaps, the boldest justice of all is to become exactly what they said you never could. This might feel like the end of a story, but it's only the beginning. Because here on our channel, we believe in stories that do more than entertain. We tell the ones that heal, that challenge, and most of all, that reflect the quiet power in people who were once underestimated. If Isabelle's journey struck a chord with you, if you've ever been dismissed, overlooked, written out of rooms you helped build, know this: you're not alone, and you're not finished. Here we spotlight women and men who didn't fight back with noise. They fought with purpose. Who didn't demand a seat at the table. They built one. Who didn't wait for recognition. They created impact so powerful, even silence had to listen. Every week, we bring you stories of reversal, resilience, and redemption. Of daughters disowned who now lead foundations. Of sons ignored who now mentor thousands. Of outcasts who turned their exile into an empire. From corporate betrayals and family injustice to quiet revolutions that begin in the smallest, most personal places. Our stories aren't about revenge. They're about restoration, about rebuilding from the margins, and about finally being seen, not for what you were labeled, but for what you truly are. So if this story moved you, share it. If it reminded you of someone you love, send it to them. If it reminded you of yourself, stay. We're just getting started. Subscribe for more cinematic stories rooted in truth, transformation, and bold human dignity. Turn on notifications so you never miss the moment someone, somewhere, reclaims their narrative. And if you've lived a story like Isabelle's, or are still in the middle of yours, we invite you to share. Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear tonight. Because when the world says you're too quiet, too different, too late, we say, tell your story louder. Welcome to the place where legacy is earned, not inherited. He slept with me because I made him feel alive. Unlike the walking corpse you've become. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her words sliced deeper than any scream could. If you've ever given your whole heart only to be told you were never enough, keep watching. Because sometimes the person who breaks you is the one who owes you the loudest apology. It was one of those crisp Chicago afternoons in early October where the light felt sharper than it should, slanting through the amber-leafed trees and casting warm shadows on the porch. The air carried a promise of colder nights ahead. I had just finished my shift at the clinic, stopped by the grocery store, and was balancing 2 reusable bags while fishing out the keys when I spotted it. An ivory envelope, thick and expensive-looking, sitting neatly against the doorframe like it had been hand-delivered. I nudged it inside with my foot, unlocked the door, and called out, "I'm home." Lily didn't respond, probably lost in her math homework again, but Noah came thudding around the corner in his socks, arms open for a hug. "Mom, guess what? My volcano model actually erupted today. Like, really?" "That's amazing, sweetie." I kissed the top of his head and set the bags down. "Did you take pictures?" He nodded proudly. Mr. Chase filmed it for the school website. I smiled, tousling his curls. Then my eyes fell back to the envelope. It had slid beneath the shoe rack, just the corner peeking out like it was shy. I pulled it free, and my heart did this odd half-stutter as I read the embossed names: Chloe Bennett and Nathan Hale. My fingers tightened slightly, the edge of the envelope pressing into my skin. Ethan walked in from the garage, slipping off his jacket. Anything interesting in the mail? I hesitated.